However, we thought the West would potentially be decided a little bit early because Iowa had such a big step in front of everybody else. Well, that step is gone thanks to perhaps the most shocking result we've seen in the Big Ten this year. Purdue over Iowa, the number 2 team in the country, 24-7. You could argue it wasn't even that close. Purdue dominant on both sides of the ball. David Bell unstoppable, and that Purdue defense, much improved but perhaps still underrated, completely exposed the Iowa offense. And when you pull off an upset like that, it doesn't matter what time you get home. Just before midnight, and the Boilermaker fans were there en masse to welcome Jeff Brom and company back to West Lafayette. Such a cool moment for the Boilermaker head coach and his team.
Well, it was a great moment, and all of our home games, we've had great turnouts, great support. Our players feel it, our coaches feel it. When you come back after a big win and you feel like you accomplished something, to have that many people turn out at the airport, it was a great sight. And you do that by working hard, being able to grind just as hard as you did the week before. Understand that it's going to take that much work, if not more, to dig deep and understand. If you really want to win, you got to really hate losing, and you don't want that feeling again. So what are you going to do to get that done?
Iowa no longer the highest-ranked team inside the Big Ten. As a matter of fact, the Hawkeyes no longer inside the top 10, dropping all the way to number 11. You see Purdue making an appearance inside the top 25 for the first time in more than a decade. Huge moment for Jeff Brom and this Boilermaker football team, a team that honestly, heading into 2021, not a lot was expected of, but offensively and defensively, so good against Iowa. I loved Jeff Brom's offensive game plan, had 3 quarterbacks shuffling in. But I mentioned that defense, not just in this game, Howard. They've been good all year long. You could make an argument they were the more impressive of the 2 units.
You could make that argument about the defense because they've really elevated their game. 3 defensive coordinators have really stepped up. You watch this team practice. They really practice at a high level, and they were able to really give Iowa a lot of fits. But ultimately, Rick, to me, this offense really, and what they were able to do to Iowa's defense is really the tail of the tape. That was unbelievable. They really took this Iowa defense and carved them up left and right, and Iowa never had an answer from the word go.
Helps when you have a guy like David Bell, 240 receiving yards, and a guy who's going to make a ton of money at the next level. He's basically unguardable when he's healthy, and he appears to be back and healthy. As for Iowa, how do the Hawkeyes get healthy again? Because I think Purdue exposed a lot of potential flaws with that Iowa offense.
They did expose some things. The challenge is to what was exposed, right? Okay, you can have a great passing game, but you still have to have the receivers and the quarterback to be able to make those throws. Purdue has been able to do this to Iowa for the last 3 years. David Bell has had unbelievable numbers. I think 37 catches, 5 touchdowns, close to 600 yards receiving against them. Iowa has not come up with an answer. So other people should be able to do that, but that's not what we see when we turn on the film. So Iowa's going to be able to bounce back. I still think it's a very good defense and a very good team. They just have to get some things corrected on the offensive side where they can manufacture some points to help that defense out.
Yeah, the happiest group of people when David Bell gets drafted will be his family. The second happiest group will be the Iowa defensive coaches that don't have to scheme up to stop the Purdue wide receiver anymore. Monster win for the Boilermakers. Also a great weekend for Minnesota, and how the Gophers continue to do this, I'm not really sure. You lose Mo Ibrahim for the year. You lose Trey Potts for the year. Chris Autman-Bell's been in and out, have injuries on defense. And yet the Gophers have won 4 of 5. They knock off a favored Nebraska team 30-23. Tanner Morgan looked like the Tanner Morgan that we saw in 2019. And suddenly, Howard, Minnesota is right back in the thick of the West Division race.
They're right there. And I still believe that they can run the ball with the best of them when they need to. And Tanner Morgan is playing the way he played last week. This team becomes very difficult to slow down. But one of the things that I really appreciate what they've been able to do is be able to play with less. And you mentioned this in the open. This is a team that's accustomed to playing without a lot of players going back to last year as far as the COVID things were concerned. So when you talk about that next man up mentality, they truly embody that and know and understand it and go out and get it done.
Other side of the coin, Nebraska is just a loss or two away from being eliminated from West Division contention. We saw the year start with a disappointing loss on the road to Illinois. Scott Frost said, "I've seen this movie over and over again." The trouble is it's now turning into a horror sequel because even in the midst of year 4, they can't seem to figure out a way to win these one-possession games.
Yeah, and it's tough. And the only way to be able to win the one-possession games is to actually go out and win them. And they had been playing so hard up to this point, but then all of a sudden things start to unravel. So you start wondering about the psyche of the team. Do they believe that they can get over the hump? They need some good things to start happening for them, and the only thing that's going to be good is for them to be able to pull out a win. They're playing hard, no question about that. Things just aren't going right for them at the end.
Now, 5 losses by a combined 28 points this year for Nebraska. So we've given you the micro, now give you the macro. Here are the Big Ten West standings: Iowa, Minnesota, and Purdue, the only 3 teams with winning records. Iowa does have a win in hand over the Gophers and Boilermakers. Don't eliminate Wisconsin and Northwestern, not yet at 1 and 2, still in the mix. Need a little bit of help down the stretch, but not out of it quite yet. Howard, ultimately, what makes the decision as far as who represents the West in Indianapolis in early December?
You would think it would be defensively, but to me, it's offensively. If you're going to win the West and be in Indianapolis, you're going to have to get outstanding quarterback play. So that's where you have to go. So what Tanner Morgan is coming off that game, he's doing some things that are really well. Peaches struggled in this game. He's got to bounce back. I think he'll be able to do that. But ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to, be able to move your team efficiently up and down the field and not turn the ball over.
And, of course, you have some games already played between those top teams, with Minnesota getting the better of Purdue, but Purdue getting the better of Iowa. Of course, you have Floyd later in the year. You have Paul Bunyan's axe.
So we got a lot
later
more
in the year.
to go.
We got a lot of stuff going on. Listen, Halliday's been awesome. The defense been really good. Michigan State's offense is explosive. And we had no idea what Mel Tucker would be able to do with this team after a weird COVID year and no continuity. We certainly didn't expect them to be undefeated heading into that October 30th matchup with Michigan.
Yeah, you talk about the coaching job that his staff has done, and obviously led by Coach Tucker. It's really been remarkable, from just really putting the offense together to also the back end. And I'm talking about recruiting. I'm talking about being able to go into the portal and bring the right players in. They've really done a great job, and the players have bought into it, including the ones that have come in and through the transfer portal. Sometimes that's a difficult situation to be in, but he's done a great job of pulling this team together.
I don't think there's any team in the country that's done a better job with transfer portal players coming in and fitting in right away than Michigan State. Now, Michigan still has a game to win this weekend to also be undefeated when they face Michigan State next weekend. But you look at Jim Harbaugh, and Howard, I think I agree with your sentiment here. He seems like a looser coach, a coach having a little bit more fun this year, which is funny because so many said it was a make or break year.
Yeah, and he really looks relaxed. And for me, it goes back to media day, having an opportunity to see him there and speak with him. I actually brought it up to him. I said, "You look more relaxed." He's like, no, Howard, this is how I always am. And I said, Coach, I'm not buying. But he is relaxed, and you see that throughout his coaching staff, and the players are playing with a lot of excitement. And one of the things I go back to is over the summer, when we watched them practice, there was not a lot of yelling and screaming at his practice. And we kind of thinking, well, is this the right way to coach or is this the wrong way to coach? And it appears he is really hitting all the buttons with his team right now.
Yeah, you could say the same thing about Jeff Brom because there were a lot of questions. Guy makes a lot of money, hadn't won a lot of big games, hadn't strung together wins. Now they're doing exactly that. And yeah, you celebrate when you knock off the number 2 team in the country, and that's exactly what Brom and his staff have done. Listen, you also have to give Jeff Brom a lot of credit. He's made multiple changes, especially with defensive coordinators. He has multiple DCs, played multiple quarterbacks this past weekend. He's using every single weapon in his arsenal available to him, and right now, they're all working.
Yeah, and I think one of the hardest things to do as a head coach when you sit in that corner office is to make changes. Because when you make changes, that means you've made some mistakes. And he's done that on the defensive side, and it has really taken off. One of the coaches I want to highlight, though, is Coach Shepard, the wide receiver coach, also the co-offensive coordinator. He has done an unbelievable job with this wide receiver group, not just this year, but since he's come to the staff. And I think they are really playing at a high level. He should get a lot of credit. This guy knows the game. I remember we were in practice, the guys were dropping the football. He said, "Guys, you're not getting it right." You remember the movie Life?
Of course.
Get on the gun line. Get on the gun line. That's what he was calling. You don't drop the ball, we're going to do some running. He was out there running with him.
Well, I'll have to ask the coaching staff at Purdue about that this weekend because I'll be part of the game broadcast for Purdue, Wisconsin. And it's not just our lone game this weekend, but Tailgate is also there. Anthony Herron once again joining Annie Sabo, and Brock Vereen comes your way from West Lafayette starting at 10 a.m., 9 Central. All Big Ten all morning on Big Ten Tailgate. Now, Minnesota is a team we also touched on that could factor in the West, just like Purdue. One of 4 Power 5 teams this year with 3 running backs to go for at least 100 yards in a game this season. I think that speaks a lot to the quality of their offensive line as well. And how about one-possession games in the last 4 seasons? To me, this goes back to coaching and coaching decisions. Minnesota is among the best in the nation in one-possession games since P.J. Fleck took over.
Yeah, you have to do a great job coaching those situations, so situational football, but you also have to have the players buy in and also be able to communicate that so that the players understand it. And they've done a great job of putting their players in the right situations. If you ever go to a practice in Minnesota, that's what his practices are based on. They just don't run plays to run plays. Everything is about situational football, and it shows up on game day.
I love going to their practices. I've been to multiple. The energy, they play the music through the loudspeaker, and it is pumping inside the stadium, and they work throughout the week. A lot of teams ease off. Energy in Minnesota is always going, and that speaks to exactly what P.J. Fleck wants.
Thinking about being in first place in the Big Ten, Northwestern had other ideas as Russell Payne's team loving it. A 2-0 win on the road against Wisconsin.
20 minutes in, the freshman McCamey cutting in from his favored left foot onto his right and burying it from 22 out inside the far post. Nothing the Wisconsin goalkeeper can do. Strikes it sweetly into the back of the net. And then 5 minutes into the second half, we see Castro taking it down inline, shaking off 2 and 3 Wisconsin defenders. Weiss with the goal, 5-hole underneath Klansnick into the back of the net, helping Northwestern live to the 2-0 victory.
Second Big Ten win of the season for Russell Payne and Northwestern. 16 shots for Wisconsin, but they could not find the back of the net. So Chicago's team headed back to Chicago with a 2-0 win. Speaking of Chicago, we send it back to Rick Pizzo.